Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Star Citizen now for 3.11 is really getting ready just around the corner for its initial first wave PTU. It could literally be any hour now. But in the meantime, to keep you tided over, we've had devs answer various questions about different aspects of 3.11's missile improvements, as well as what's going on with the Redeemer rework in a bit more detail. So let's start with that. There was a series of questions about the Redeemer rework, from what weaponry does it have now, and what does the pilot control, to how does its VTOL work now. John and crew replied on that and a lot more. With this, just wanted to clear a few things up and expand on others, re-weaponry and VTOL, as I've seen a few comments about them in here and on other threads on Reddit, etc. VTOL, I misspoke in the Calling All Devs video by saying the nutcrackers rotate for VTOL, which made it sound like it's 100% a fact, when it is one of the options we are actually exploring. As it stands, we have a plan for whether they will or won't rotate, as we're still unsure ourselves. There are integrated VTOL thrusters in the nutcrackers for if we can't or don't rotate them, but if we do, then they would rotate to a V position so as to have clearance to land with them like this. So no promises which will make the end result, but the concept mesh was built to support both options and we'll prove it out when we hit white box production. So what they're basically saying there is that they have the basic concept done for these things, and they have plans to do it in potentially multiple ways, because they're going to go, does this work? No. Well, they would do it the other way, if you see what I mean. So they will explore further during white box production and use the method there that is more sensible to use. Weaponry, as mentioned, this is a gunship, a 5-person multi-crew gunship, which means we don't want the pilot out the box controlling all of the guns. Of course, you can choose to slave some of those in the future with CPU blades. There isn't enough capacity to do all of them though, but really the goal here is to bring a crew for maximum damage. So I really like that. That's basically then confirming that CPU blades in the future, almost certainly, at least the plan is to have them be able to slave turrets like they said originally, as well as potentially having some turrets controlled by AI. Obviously there's going to be the NPC route eventually as well, where you can hire crew for your ships, but having the pilot be able to choose if he goes, well actually we're only running with a crew of 3, so I'll slave these guns to my needs so they fire where I'm pointing, that might be a really good idea. So I just like that option. As for the weapons themselves, we often use existing weapons and scale them up to the desired size for the concept work, so people eyeballing the weapon size are in for a treat. As it stands, this is what the ship packs, so bear in mind this might change obviously. A top-manned and bottom-manned turret, both with twin size 5 ballistic gatlings. 2 remote turrets, one on the rear and one on the front, with twin size 3 laser cannons. The pilot has control of wing mounts, so 2 size 4 ballistic repeaters, fixed by default. The pilot also controls the missiles, which are 4 size 4 racks, and each of them have quad size 2 missiles by default, so you've got 16 size 2 missiles there, which is pretty cool. And John Crew hopes you have enough DACA there. Pew, 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 pew. John then did go on to say, but the Invictus text said XYZ. Unfortunately, at the time the Invictus launch week content was produced, this concept pass hadn't had all of its reviews with all disciplines, so the text there was based on the older mesh. We'll almost certainly be talking and showing more about the interior in the future, so I'll save all the other questions for answering then with imagery. With turrets and HUDs, there was a question on when would we get some form of target status for gunners, with the answer being the system will have target information available for all gunners eventually. It is especially important in turrets where you can't see any MFDs, multifunction displays, due to the turret elevation, and in remote turrets as well. However, we first need to wait until some of the more basic HUD and MFD changes are completed. There was a lot of questions on missiles, follow-up questions for missiles, what's going on with 3.11's missiles, so let's go through each of these with the question and answer. Will launch decoys and noise fields follow the ship they are dropped from? The initial projectile that contains the noise charge will inherit the ship's velocity, though after it explodes, the field will stay in place, so it won't follow the ship. Are decoys just flares, effective against most missile types now? Decoys are strong, omnidirectional signature sources. The spoofing is based on angular offsets to the target and the relative signal strengths. What I discerned from that answer was yes. The noise fields replacing chaff are referred to as actively distorting and jamming signatures. How do they jam sensors? If you come from a sim background, the word actively sounds stronger than it is. Spoken in code terms, a noise field is effectively a limited space in which contained signatures are dampened down by a certain degree, so that process can be described as active. However, it does not mean the same as active jamming in the real world. While we might have the equivalent of e-warfare in the future, we are not trying to directly emulate modern day ECM weapons or sensors that the air forces might have in their inventory. What is the logic behind IR and EM missile locks being known to the target? I assume you're asking for the logic in the lore. Missiles give off quite a big signature, which the ship's radar, which is strictly speaking not a radar but a sensor fusion display showing detected EM, CS and IR signatures, can easily pick up. The missile warning system can then figure out if the missile is intended for you or not. Based on the detected missile signature itself, it is able to match it against the catalogue of known missiles and figure out the type. The ship shouldn't actually tell you about these things before the incoming missile is ignited. There was quite an in-depth answer regarding CIG researching modern day missile technologies. We're actually pretty well educated on modern age weapons systems due to our own research and access to SMEs and playing flight sims, of course. However, modern missile tech in all its depth is not something that translates easy into Star Citizen. While our game has very strong simulation aspects, it does not want to be a study level sim, and thus we're taking our freedom when it comes to things like missile gameplay or specifics in how signatures work. We do not necessarily need to be realistic, but we're aiming for a high degree of believability, and the lore team will work out the science behind it. Interestingly enough, the change that you cannot fire two separate missile types at the same time is actually grounded in the real world as well. Real missiles and other types of ordnance require vastly different methods from the pilots and gunners to employ them, e.g. you will not see an airframe launch both an AIM-9 and an AGM-65 at the same time, as both missiles have entirely different purposes. Ultimately, we also want that kind of difference in Star Citizen as well. A torpedo will not be a slightly slower ignite missile. Both will have their unique spaces in which they perform well, and they will require their own methods to be successfully launched. Most of that is not in the scope of 3.11, of course, but forcing the pilot to focus on one missile type at a time is the first step in that process. In the future, the missile operator mode will expand on that. Will capital ships fire missiles differently? We will approach multi-crew missile gameplay and capital ship style missile launching in the future, but it requires a lot of code changes in the missiles and item controllers so that we can more easily swap authorities between seats. That requires quite a chunk of engineering time, so it's not something that we can do for 3.11. When we get closer to the missile operator mode, we will likely know more about this. Can missiles lock the wrong or different targets after their targeting systems are temporarily disrupted? We experimented with wrong targets, but it just caused too many friendly fire incidents, so the missiles in 3.11 will either go for decoys or for their original targets. What direction do the countermeasures fire off in? The direction of the projectiles is based on the attachment direction of the launcher. It's different for all ships. The velocity of the countermeasure projectiles is between 60 and 90 meters per second. Depends on the type, but they inherit the ship's velocity as well. With the time to impact added to missiles, are they being slowed down across the board so actual use can be made of it? We won't have time to do a big pass on the missile ballistics in 3.11, so their general behaviour will stay roughly the same, with slight adjustments to their fuel capacities. More changes will be coming, though, with the missile operator system next year. There was also a sort of statement, I wonder if the new countermeasures will work eventually on auto gimbal, and if turrets will sometimes get auto gimbal too. With the answer for this being, yes, you can use noise fields to disrupt an auto gimbal lock on yourself. Noise fields will disrupt sensors if the target signature is low enough, and by extension any form of target locks and aim assists. This includes auto gimbals, fixed assist, and gun convergence. It's simply because if the radar can't see a target, it won't be able to lock onto it. By extension, that means the attacking ship cannot compute a valid fire solution. and we're quite happy with how the turrets turned out and do not plan to add auto gimbals to them at this time. We'd rather focus on quality of life improvements for turrets. And that's it for today's dev response. What are your thoughts on the missile changes? Are you liking how the Redeemer is looking at the moment? Do you think that it's going to be a popular ship? Are you looking forward to Alpha 3.11? Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What am I shilling for today, I hear you ask? Do you hate it when people steal all of your money and your house over the internet? I know I do. NordVPN may have been invented by wizards to help protect your personal data from the prying eyes of the dark web, a sinister cabal of technomancers that grow in power the more they know about your browsing habits. The true story of NordVPN's origins are unknown and lost to the ages, and without using facts, no one really knows how it provides more accessibility to otherwise censored websites or a safer security experience for all that use it. All I know is that it does, and that when you sign up to it, the power level of my bank account grows, and I use it, and maybe you should too. Every month we have a giveaway for a Star Citizen ship. For this month of September, it's for the Talon Light Fighter, the Battlebird Glass Cannon. Just comment on any of my videos made during September 2020 to be in for a chance of winning that. That ship should be flyable by the end of the year. If you'd like to further support the channel, there is Patreon or YouTube channel memberships via the join button down below. That will net you some exclusive content each month, but sharing videos, liking, subscribing, dinging the bell, as well as commenting and giving feedback really does help the channel to grow and give me an idea of what you guys want. Thanks very much for watching, you take care, and I'll see you in the verse.